All right. Well, look, it's 1 minute past. Shall we begin? Because you're all good enough to have been on time. I think at the very least we could do is reflect our appreciation for that, and we can get cracking. Look, this is our compassionate leadership power hour. We're looking forward to a bit of interaction with you all. So feel free if you want to leave your cameras on. That's always lovely. When we get to the interactive bit, you'll be invited to unmute and share your ideas and so on. But this is a bit of a whistle-stop tour through some stuff. But I thought it's interesting, isn't it, that the whole business of compassionate leadership has become a bit de rigueur over the recent years. And it wasn't really spoken about, certainly across NHS and social care circles before kind of the last 3 or 4 years, perhaps. And I know Health Education Improvement Wales have put a huge amount of effort into their promotion of compassionate leadership, as indeed, to be fair, have been the NHS umbrella organisations in the rest of the United Kingdom. But I just thought it might be worth reminding us that compassion is not a new thing. I mean, here you are. Look at her. Look at her. Avalokiteshvara, Buddhist goddess of compassion. Isn't that fabulous? Look at the detail in that. I mean, can you imagine if you get one arm wrong and it falls off and you've got to start the whole blasted thing again? Can you just imagine? That was made in the 14th century in Tibet. Today it's displayed in the Philadelphia Gallery of Fine Art. Isn't it just glorious? And the many hands of compassion. I really rather like that. There you go. You've learnt something else. The Buddhist goddess of compassion. Next pub quiz that you go along to, it's Avalokiteshvara, and you'll get extra points in the pub quiz if you spell her name right first time. Okay, let's look a little bit nearer to home, if you like. How about this? Isn't this just gorgeous? Jacopo Bassano's painting of the Good Samaritan, painted in 1562, hanging now in the National Gallery in London. And I don't know whether any of you visited the National Gallery in London or even seen Jacopo Bassano's painting of the Good Samaritan, but get up close is my recommendation. I've been lucky enough to see it. And the beautiful thing about it is the brushwork is just exquisite. When you get up close and you see the fineness of the brushwork, you realize he's painting it with compassion in his heart. So it's all very well that it's displaying the painting of the Good Samaritan. And by the way, can you all see, if you look really up close, I'm going to use my cursor here. Can you see here? So this is the priest and the Levite who are moving away, having walked past the poor individual who's been robbed and had all of his clothes taken and so on, left bloodied and so on. Can you see? What a wonderful kind of picture there. They're walking past. They're still not taking any notice, but the Good Samaritan is helping the injured traveller onto his mule so he can be helped away. I don't know whether you're aware of the Good Samaritan whole story, but he also pays for the Good Samaritan to have a night in an inn. It's just a delightful thing, but it's the painting that is the real gorgeousness here. If you do get the chance to have a look, please go along. And if you want to come really up to date to look at compassion in art, how about Murugaya's picture of compassion, developed with the Compass Collective and exhibited at the South Bank Centre in London in 2023. I think it is still there, but you probably have to be quick before it goes and gets displayed somewhere else. Does anybody know anything about the Compass Collective? Okay, well, the Compass Collective is, I think it's just a delightful organisation. So it's set up by and for the children of refugees who've been accepted into the United Kingdom. And the idea is the children were approached by Murugaya as an art project to get them to tell him, he's a very famous Japanese artist, to get them to tell him how they would like compassion to be represented in a formal painting that Murugaya had been commissioned to paint. And they came up with this. So you've got these lovely, I don't know whether you can see here, but you've got these flowers basically that are symbols of compassion in Japan. And the big thing that the children spoke about was the hug, the kind of no holds barred, I'm not being judgmental or anything like that. I'm giving you a hug, and you look at the emotion that the hug creates in this particular image. Isn't that just delightful? So if you do get a chance to get along to the South Bank Centre, go and have a look, and you can see Murugaya's painting there. Look him up, Google him. He's a fascinating person. Okay. So there we are. That's a quick kind of from the 14th century right up to the modern day. Please don't be thinking that compassion and compassionate leadership and what compassion can do in terms of benefits for human beings and society is a new phenomenon. Its power has been known and acknowledged for years. The big question, therefore, is why has it taken the NHS and social care so long, perhaps, to happen upon it and to embrace it and promote it as a force for good in respect of leadership? Well, let's have a little look, because I want to give you some more examples of the power of good in this regard. Here's this lovely young lady. This is Naraya. And you won't know this about Naraya. I did some work recently for the Royal Wolverhampton and Walsall Healthcare NHS Trusts. And I did a little bit of research around the town of Wolverhampton for some compassionate recent projects. And lots of people mention Naraya. She's a schoolgirl. I think she lives in Willenhall in Wolverhampton. And she started putting up lamppost messages in 2023. She was experiencing a bit of a tough time at school. I think she was being bullied a little bit and that kind of stuff. And she just decided that she would express herself positively through putting up little messages on lampposts all around Wolverhampton on her bus route and that kind of stuff. Isn't that lovely? So she writes these individually, ties them to lampposts all around the place, and just is aiming to put a smile on people's faces. Isn't that just glorious? We need to make a bit of a star of Naraya. I think this is one of the loveliest stories. If you are reading this, you are amazing. Copyright Naraya 2023. Good on her, everybody. How about this then? Any of you here today from Scotland? Anybody from Scotland? Okay, if you are from Scotland and you're just too oh, thank you. Is it Pathan or Minaz? I'm not absolutely certain. Forgive me. It's always difficult when you see I think it's probably Minaz. Anyway, lovely to have you with us, Minaz. This is the Trua Cantor Project. Any of you heard of the Trua Cantor Project? So if you can imagine, if you're dealing with near death, palliative care, or you're a family of somebody who is nearing the end of their life, if you live in the Highlands and Islands, you're likely to be geographically very well separated from any kind of support networks. And the Trua Cantor Project was set up specifically to help people going through palliative care or end of life situations, so they felt there was a network around them by which they could feel supported. And one of the things they did, this was in Perth, this was a pair of garage doors, and somebody within the Trua Cantor Project decided to paint angel wings on the garage doors and then invite people to go and pose in front of the angel wings so they could start to have conversations about end of life and that kind of stuff. And I just couldn't resist the picture of this Labrador retriever that had been positioned there because the owner was nearing the end of their life. And I just thought it's gorgeous, very moving that the lead is just kind of sitting there on the ground and so on. You can't believe that a year after this, somebody decided to paint over the garage doors in black paint. But guess what? They've now removed that and they've started to put these angels wings all over park benches and that kind of stuff, just to help people to have conversations about end of life palliative care. Isn't that lovely? Support network in some of the most rural, isolated communities in the United Kingdom. So bravo to all in Perth and Kinross. The great shame is that the Trua Cantor funding was ended at the end of 2023. So they're trying to continue the work, but it's just one of those things I wanted to bring. I just can't try to spread a bit of joy here so you understand what compassion brings us in societies, communities, organizations, and so on. It makes people feel valued and supported and special. How about this then? The antithesis, perhaps, of all that we've discussed so far. I don't need to go into great detail at this point. I'm sure you will all be perfectly well aware of the post office scandal, and it remains a scandal, unfortunately. But this is what happens when we get compassion wrong or it's absent in our organizations or our communities. We just foster this toxicity, perhaps without even meaning to, but because we haven't got compassion in our hearts and our minds, the consequence of that is people feel abandoned, they feel isolated, they don't feel supported, people's behaviors become toxic and so on. And it's a rather unpleasant downward spiral, which I would suggest to you is the consequence of not having it. And if you want to know how that looks in respect of the NHS and social care, well, this rather depressing slide is from NHS employers and the NHS Staff Council Health, Safety and Wellbeing Group. Look at this. 18.7% of staff experienced bullying or harassment in the last year from colleagues. Nearly 1 in 5 of you experiencing bullying or harassment in the last year from colleagues. 11% of you experienced bullying or harassment in the last year from their manager. And 98% of you report experiencing incivility in the workplace. That could be from patients, families, organizational colleagues, who knows what it might be, but just general incivility, unpleasantness, rudeness, thoughtlessness, all that kind of stuff. You get the idea? This, I mean, I don't need to kind of go down here. You can read this yourselves, but look at the actual costs to the NHS of just this lack of compassion behavior. In other words, compassionate leadership isn't something that might be nice to have. It's something that we should be prepared to crawl naked across broken glass in pursuit of embracing and adhering to. I hope that makes sense. There's a real consequence, in other words, in terms of pounds, shillings and pence in respect of an absence of compassion. And more remarkably, look here. I mean, these figures will not be unknown to most of you. And apologies if this comes across as a bit NHS-y. It's just that we don't particularly have a lot of really good stats in respect of social care that we might use. But these are the consequences I would suggest to you, where we don't have compassion as a rule of thumb across the NHS and social care. These are the consequences that we are obliged to put up with. Okay, the most damning one, I think, is that only 63% of you would recommend the NHS as a place to be cared for. Goodness me. I don't know where to go from there, really. Well, let's try this instead. So I want you to do a little exercise for me. Can you all get hold of a piece of paper, please? And I want you to write a line down the middle of the piece of paper. And on the one side, I want you to write best. And on the other side, I would like you to write worst, please. So it looks like that. Then what I'd like you to do, I just want you to concentrate on this side of the paper first, the worst side of the paper first. I want you to think of or imagine a time when you've had the worst boss that you've ever had. By the way, I'm not wildly interested in you shouting out their name. If you're feeling that this might provoke some kind of need for therapy, then talk to me separately. We'll do what we can. But what I want you to do is imagine when you had your worst ever boss. I want you to take your mind back, however painful that may be, to the time when you had that worst boss. And I just want each of you to jot down 5 or 6 little bullet points as forensically as possible about the behaviors that individual was presenting on a daily basis that make you feel now, Tuesday, the 26th of November 24, that you can recall those. Okay, so just jot down 5 or 6 bullet pointy things. What were their behaviors that were making you feel that's your worst ever boss? By the way, if your worst ever boss is sitting just a short distance away from you, and it happens to be a now situation, then perhaps put the speakers on a mute to some extent and just jot away quietly with your kind of arms around it like you might have done at school if you were trying to hide an answer. Of course, that won't be happening. Try to be as forensic as possible. So if it's kind of bullying or harassment, can you just be a bit more precise than that? Detail exactly what they were doing. And if you're lucky enough to have always had a fab boss, well, take your mind back to your worst teacher or something like that. Just concentrate on worst boss for now, please. And when you're finished, just, if you've got your camera on, look me in the eye. Give me the eyes so I can tell that you're ready. Good, lovely, Kate. Good eyes. Good eyes, Philip. Thank you. Carly, yeah, lovely. How's the rest getting on? Haven't seen Sinead's eyes just yet, but this is a very long document that she's creating. All right, let's feel free, if you don't mind, could you just kind of put your virtual hand up at this stage? And what I'll do is I'll come to you, I'll ask you to unmute. And if you'd then like to share some of your notes with us, that would be very helpful. So Aruna, would you like to go first, please?
Yeah, sure. So the worst thing was taking the credit. And the second thing I remember about is playing the favoritism games, playing favorites with the staff members.
Yeah. Horrible. Yeah. Can I take it that you weren't one of the favorites? So I didn't mean to ask that question. It just came out. And by the time it was halfway out, I couldn't kind of withdraw it. I get that, Aruna. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go next to Kate. Would you like to go next?
Hi, yeah. This person, the first thing that came to mind was punitive, very punitive and dictatorial, and not listening and never taking ideas on board, and really not showing respect, and just forgetting respect for even patients.
Thank you very much. No respect. Got that. Thank you very much, Kate. Fiona, Fiona's here. Joy, everybody. Fiona from UHL is here. Would you like to go next, Fiona? Hello, how are you doing?
Thank you. Yes, good, thank you. My one was that I was in a team of 3, including the line manager, and she didn't refer to us by name. She would just refer to us as the girls.
Oh, right. Okay. I'm going to put no respect and no name. Okay. Yes, that's not grand. So I'll call it impersonal. How about that?
Yeah.
And insensitive. Lovely. Well, I don't mean lovely. You know what I mean. Saffron, have a go. What have you got?
Hi, hello. Mine is slightly different because in my
Could you just come a tiny bit closer to your microphone, I wonder? That would be very helpful.
Is that a little bit better?
A little, yes.
Yeah.
But it's okay. You work for HEIW, so it's okay.
Yeah. So my old job, I used to work in hospitality, so it would be quite a stressful environment anyway. But my manager sometimes, they would get very stressed and take it out on everyone else.
And how would that manifest itself, Saffron? What would he do?
Just make little comments about how the work we were doing wasn't good enough, and even in the busiest times, there would still be things that perhaps if we didn't do one thing, that's the thing that was focused on. And they'd sometimes be a bit condescending sometimes.
Okay, got that. Thank you. Lovely. Would anybody else like to have a go? We're getting a good list here. Is it Brock? I think it's Brock or Fitri. Forgive me. It's always difficult to know which is coming first, your forename or your surname. So forgive me. You're still on mute, I'm afraid. It's all right.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think it's. I had a manager before, always coming really miserable every morning, bringing the team down, and
once she was like screaming at me, and bear in mind we in the open plan office for something that wasn't even my fault, because she was always in a bad mood. She does that many times actually with other staff members, and then when she found out that it wasn't my fault of what she's actually screaming about, she didn't even say sorry. So there's that very this lack of self-awareness and kind of respect of other people.
Got you. Unapologetic, perpetual bad mood. Got all that. Okay, I'm sorry you had. Is it Fitri or is it Brock? Forgive me.
No, Fitri.
Fitri, thank you very much. The wonderful, the one and only Julie Keith is on the call today, chair of our mental health special interest group. Julie, lovely to have you with us. What have you got?
Just somebody who's very confrontative and then would challenge you, and if they didn't like your point of view, they would kind of tell you you're wrong. And they would kind of, yeah, and they would keep going on in front of everybody else as well. It's like, yeah, get a bit.
Wouldn't let things go.
No, oh, absolutely not. No.
Got you. Thank you very much, Julie, and lovely to have you with us. Carly, yes, go ahead from Dartmoor. I think that's Dartmoor behind you.
It is, yes. Yeah, so a previous experience, I guess, was a boss like talking badly about your colleagues in front of you and trying to encourage you to speak badly as well, and just creating that negative experience and feeling uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable. That sounds horrible. Okay, well, I'm sorry you were put through that. Jacqueline from the fabulous Royal Wolverhampton, jewel of the West Midlands. What have you got to say, Jacqueline?
Yeah, unfortunately, there is some micromanaging going on in the Royal Wolverhampton.
Oh dear.
And I think that where you are unable to sort of make decisions, everything needs to be passed through there. You feel like you lack your autonomy and work with your hands tied behind your back sometimes. So yeah, that's very bad experience.
Oh dear. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I've just made some notes here. All right. Well, look, thank you, Jacqueline. I've got quite a list here. I'm sure some of the rest of you have been making notes, but I've got things like taking credit, favoritism, punitive, dictatorial, not listening, impatient, no respect, no name, impersonal, insensitive, nasty comments, dismissive, condescending, miserable, shouting, unreasonable, perpetual bad mood, unapologetic, confrontative, wouldn't let things go, behind the back gossip, micromanaging, and prevents autonomy. So those of you who need therapy, just kind of take 30 seconds to yourself now. That's okay. You can adopt the position, and you know, sooner. I'm sorry to be so glib about it, but there's not much I can do to help you right now. Next time I come and visit up there, it'd be lovely to spend some time. Do please come and say hi to me if we've not met in person before. You know what I'm going to ask you to do now. I'd like you to move over onto the left side of the piece of paper, please. And I'd like you to record the best boss behaviours that you've ever had. I'll give you 3 or 4 minutes to just do that. As I say, 3 or 4 bullet points. That should be absolutely lovely. And we'll go from there. Thank you. And when you've done, just give me the eyes again. That would be very helpful. Thank you, Aruna. Fiona's ready. There's the eyes. Emma's ready. Thank you, Emma. From the NHS Leadership Academy, no less. Whoop, whoop. Kate's ready. Nancy's ready. Nancy, where do you work? In internal communications. Where's that?
I am with Fiona at UHL.
Oh, fabulous. So all of you poor souls who missed me last week, you've all decided to tune in today on this. Well, that's lovely. There we are. We'll do this in person soon, I promise you. All right, let's see how we get on. would you like to go first and share some thoughts with us?
So my best boss, I mean, she was a mentor to me, a coach, I would say. So, and she was very transparent, and always gave a constructive feedback. So I would say these are the three things which really motivated me to give my best to my job task assigned.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Aruna. Emma, would you like to go next? Thank you.
Hi there. Yeah, I had a boss who was very supportive of my professional development, to the extent that, having supported me to take on new projects, she then got my job description changed so that all of the new skills were in there, and that was something that she had to go levels above herself to get signed off. So it was a lot of work for her to do, and I really appreciated it.
Lovely. I put courageous and hardworking. How about that? Thank you very much. Jacqueline, over to you. Oh, sorry, I've missed Kate out, but I'll come to Kate when we've done Jacqueline. Thank you.
Mine would have probably been a previous matron that definitely did show genuine concern for the people that she managed, made you feel valued, and sort of, you know, ticked all the boxes really. It would be hard to kind of find something that was bad about her, because, as the lady mentioned first off, she was definitely that coach that posed those questions. She would never give you the solution. She would encourage you to find the answers, and did that definitely through her genuine concern that for you as the leader of the area, as well as the patients that were in your care.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Jacqueline. You must have been on one of my high performance leadership workshops, because you keep quoting those fabulous words, genuine concern. You know how important that all is. There we go. Kate, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so for me, it's about being accessible. And this manager, when I'm with her, she listens and is really present in sort of meetings. And there's also a really good recognition of the effort and successes, but also a recognition when things going aren't so well, and the support when it's either needed for me because I need to do better, or because it's just sad because things aren't going the way that we want them to. So that recognition of all aspects is really good, and the collaboration.
That's lovely. Okay, so what I've got here, I don't think anybody else got their hand up. So I've got mentoring, coach, transparent, constructive, supportive, professional, reflective, courageous and hardworking, show genuine concern, made me feel valued, enabling, accessible, listening, present, recognizing, empathetic and collaborative. Okay, there it all is. There it all is, folks. You see how busy I've been writing? I should have been a GP, because none of you would be able to read what I've just scrawled here, I promise you. All right, so why have we just done this exercise? In the context of compassionate leadership, why have we just done this exercise? By the way, this is one of those interactive moments, if anybody would like to have a go. No? Oh, Julie, thank you for rescuing the situation. Bless you. Go on, what have you got?
Well, it's kind of how those behaviours make you feel.
Absolutely so. We know from, remember, I didn't write these down. This is from your own personal worked experiences, that there's your behaviours that you recall, I suspect, with visceral detail. You can smell them, you can hear them, dare I say it, you can probably taste them. You know, you'll as soon as you start talking about that individual, you put that individual in your mind, all of those recollections come back in appalling detail. Equally, as soon as we start talking about the best people, you know, those fabulous people, actually we recall with real warmth and affection their behaviours as well. So, oh, I'm sorry, Tom, lovely to have you with us. Would you like to comment as well?
No, just very briefly, building on what the previous person said, I think they're those things that manifest, aren't they? That's how they manifest. and you can't fake them. You know, you can. There was a wonderful phrase I heard somewhere the other day. Somebody talked about their values and how they manifested them. You know, being lived rather than laminated.
I like that. I'm going to pinch that.
You can't. You know, if somebody says this is a compassionate working environment, or you know, or kindness and things like that, you've got to see evidence of those, haven't you? And when it's absent, you notice it, and when it's not absent, it's there. You see it, and absolutely, as you were saying, you know, you feel differently. You can experience it. You feel within it. And as I say, when it's absent and it's a bit cold and chilly in there, then you can certainly feel that as well. So you can't fake them, I guess, John.
There we go. Thank you very much, Tom. Heartily agree. There's something else about this. I mean, we understand the toxicity of this side, and we understand the wonderful positive impact it can have on people's engagement and trust and ability to want to do things, you know, kind of promotes energy and positivity of spirit, that kind of stuff. There's something else that should strike all of us if we put our honesty hats on really hard over our heads, which is, of course, that we're all human beings. We are all fallible. We all have vulnerabilities. We shouldn't worry about that. We should embrace it and acknowledge it and be brave enough to say to ourselves, do you know what? I know full well that occasionally I'll perhaps come into work and I've had a bad start to the day. Something's been going on at home, or there's been a problem with one of the children or something like that. And you will display behaviours that actually, with your honesty hat pulled firmly over your ears, you would acknowledge are absolutely on this worst side of the piece of paper. Okay? It's not great, but it's okay, so long as we're conscious enough and brave enough to recognize and be reflective of the fact that we've been over on that side of the page. We should then be trying to move heaven and earth to get ourselves back onto the best boss side of the page. Go and have a walk around the car park. Go and have a cup of coffee with a trusted confidant or something like that. Best still, when you've had that walk round or a cup of coffee, go back to the people who you are privileged to lead. Acknowledge that your behaviour hasn't been all that grand. Feel free to apologise. You don't need to rationalise it or explain it. But do you know what? Acknowledging our vulnerabilities and our fallibilities and being brave enough to look our people in the face and apologise for it is a really positive thing to be able to do. So I would heartily endorse that kind of an activity, but you've got to be able to be reflective in order to do that. The other thing, of course, is whether you know it or not, what you've just created is a template for compassionate leadership. You know from your own worked experience, direct worked experience, that when people do this stuff, it makes you feel supported, recognized, acknowledged, and valued. You know when people do this stuff, it makes you feel isolated, alienated, bitter, and resentful. Well, there we are then. You want to know how to do compassionate leadership and what some of the micro behaviors might be. There you go. All we need to do is fold it over. There's your template, folks. All happy? By the way, you might be wondering at this stage, who is this rather wonderful looking lady? Well, this, of course, is you see, Jacqueline Slater. I was teeing this up for you. Come on, Jacqueline. Who do you think that is?
We have got people.
Sorry, John. I do recognise the slide. I'm trying to find a name now. I know you've talked about being very inspiring.
Oh, and I've just said for you.
She's the one who leads. She's the one who talks about the components that are mentioned in terms of
follower needs. You are spot on. You're spot on. As I can see, Jade has just put it in the chat. This is, of course, and I know, Carly, you knew this, didn't you? This is Professor Beverly Alamo Metcalf, very famous academic, emeritus professor of leadership studies at Leeds University Business School and elsewhere, and talks about follower needs. What do followers need of their leaders in order for those followers to feel empowered and confident and competent and supported and all of those other wonderful things? So I think in the context of compassionate leadership, if you want some practical stuff, then the exercise that you've just done serves us very well. If I may, I also want to talk to you about somebody else who's done a huge amount of work on compassionate leadership and indeed has written a book in collaboration with our friends at Health Education Improvement Wales called West. I'm sure many of you may have even come across the book in the past, but Michael's book is a good old read. It's fabulous. It's littered with case study examples, but I'm going to do a slight spoiler on this. I thought it might be helpful in the context of compassionate leadership if I just take you through Michael's 4 foundations of what compassionate leadership really is. So would anybody like to speculate what the first foundation principle of compassionate leadership is? And if you're from HEIW, do not shout out, because really this ought to be through you like a stick of rock, to be quite honest. But for everybody else, what do you think the first foundation principle, if you want to be a compassionate leader, what's the first thing that you need to make time to do? Go on, Nancy. This is your first go live in this workshop today, so this better be good. Here you go.
Is it listen?
Oh, that's pretty good.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty good. Well, I can't give you the touch of the skirt of genius, but it's a very good effort. Fitri, would you like to have a go?
Understanding.
You're a little ahead of yourself there. That will come in very useful a little way down the line. Kate, what about you?
Is it showing actual genuine concern for your team?
Well, that would be lovely. It's part of this, or I'm not going to keep going on this. It's the first foundation cornerstone is attending. It's taking time and effort so that actually you diarize time to spend with your people, where what you're doing is you're making yourself available so they feel that they can come and chat to you, engage with you, and tell them what's going on. The first thing you might be wondering, what the heck is this lump of stone here? Anybody recognize it? It's difficult to read, but its headline is, "Will you come a Sunday morning?" Anybody got any ideas? 1896, folks. Bolton, Winter Hill above the city of Bolton. And what you might not know, but back in the 1800s, Bolton was a hotbed of the mill industry. And you can imagine being shut in a mill, working under appalling, noisy, dusty, dangerous conditions all week. And then on a Sunday, you're given the day off, and lots of the Boltonians would go up onto Winter Hill, which overlooks the city, for a walk on what was a public right of way, okay? Until some rather unpleasant landowners, and dare I say mill owners, decided that they were going to stop that, obstruct the public right of way by putting up fences and such like, and actively prevent Boltonians from going and walking on Winter Hill as they'd done for centuries previously. And what a few brave souls, and they were brave, because to take on the mill owners where you probably had your employ, you'd be blacklisted and life would be made very tough for you. But they decided to arrange a little demonstration. They thought it would only be a few people who would turn up. They did some printing and issued leaflets around. 10,000 Boltonians turned up, folks, and did the first ever mass trespass in United Kingdom history, where they all swarmed over Winter Hill, overpowered the landowners' guards and heavies, and basically made their point. It didn't end particularly well for those brave people ultimately, but actually what you can't believe is it took 100 years, but in 1996, in 2003 finally, that route over Winter Hill was finally declared as a public right of way. But if those brave people hadn't actually taken the trouble to invite people to attend in the first place, that couldn't have occurred. Isn't that a lovely story? And by the way, I walked over Winter Hill in August this year and I saw the stone, and that's why I took a photograph of it, because I thought it was so inspiring. So that's the first foundation. We've got to make time for people to be able to attend with us. Anybody got any ideas about number 2? What's the second foundation principle? This is one of those interactive moments again, folks. Second principle. Come on, you've attended, so they're going to have spoken to you. Carly, what have you got? Go on. This is your big moment. Don't let us down.
Do you listen to what they've told you?
Well, actually, I suppose I'm going to give you that. It's the you word. So if you do listen to somebody, what do you demonstrate? What are you required to demonstrate if they're to know that you have listened?
Understanding.
Oh, I tell you what, Carly, you wasted there. Absolutely. That's what we do. The second key foundation is that we understand. So what I've got here for you, you might be thinking, this is a rather extraordinary photograph, John. Well, let me tell you, these are two wonderful people holding up the announcement of Loganair's new Cardiff to Edinburgh flight service. Okay, Loganair, as far as I'm concerned, probably the greatest airline on the planet. Do you know what your in-flight meal is on Loganair, irrespective of your destination or length of flight? Do you know what honestly, your in-flight meal? It's a Tunnocks caramel biscuit. That's your in-flight meal. You don't have to have one. They bring a basket round and you can act like the fairground kind of grabber, you know. You can take as many as you like, but that is your Loganair in-flight meal, okay? Let me tell you what happened when I took Loganair from Cardiff up to Edinburgh. I was going up to work with our friends at NHS Education Scotland. I'd got onto the plane, put my seatbelt on, and very shortly after doing so, 6 people got on board, all wearing beautiful, very red polo shirts with the fleur-de-lis over the left breast, and underneath the fleur-de-lis demonstrating a Wales national sporting occasion, it said Wales Deaf Bowling Team 2023. I thought, well, that's fantastic. They all got on and they were all seated together. They strapped themselves in. The flight attendant on the Loganair flight, it's only a tiny plane from Cardiff up to Edinburgh. The flight attendant then did the safety briefing. She completed the safety briefing. Then she went to where the deaf bowlers were sitting, knelt in the aisle next to them, and she signed using BSL the whole of the cabin safety announcement. How cool is that? How cool is that, folks? Has anybody ever seen that on an aeroplane before? Let me tell you, not a dry eye in the house, folks. Fantastic. And I got chatting to that lady. She explained that her sister had been profoundly deaf since birth. She'd therefore been obliged to learn BSL. And at a meeting about a year previously, she told all of the Loganair cabin crew about the fact that she could sign the cabin crew safety announcement, and she wondered if they might all like to learn it. Let me tell you, as a consequence of that, every single member of Loganair cabin crew can now BSL the cabin safety announcement. So when they look at the passenger manifest, which will declare if people have got a deafness disability, they pick that out. If there are people on board who've got a deaf condition, they automatically, all of them, go into BSL mode. Isn't that just the coolest thing? That's what we mean by demonstrating an understanding of what's taking place. Isn't that a lovely story? And Carly, thank you. You came. I'm giving you correct there. Okay, listening. So when we've attended, we've understood. What do you think the third thing we might need to do would be? Go on, Emma. Here we go. Big moment. Drum roll. Go on.
I don't know if it's the right word, but somehow acting on what's actually been said.
You're kind of one step ahead, but it's oh, you could barely get a bus ticket between the fact that you're right and hardly. Very close, Emma. Should we be generous and say to Emma, well done, everybody? Oh, hang on. Jacqueline's coming in. Go on, Jacqueline. What have you got?
I think it was something around empathising before you take action, isn't it?
All right, listen, I'm giving Jacqueline and Emma, I'm giving you equal bragging rights, okay? The next thing is absolutely empathising, okay? So you've attended, you've understood, you've now got to demonstrate some empathy with the person with whom you are engaged. And this is quite a sad slide in many respects. Not this bit, but this bit is rather sad. This was during COVID, okay, and I sing in a Welsh male voice choir, and one of our choristers had passed away, okay. Actually, I should say not through COVID, but through something else. And during COVID, of course, you weren't allowed to go along to funerals and so on when we had the first problems with it, but you were allowed to attend outside, and so long as you had distancing and you were wearing face masks and so on, you could kind of gather and so on. This is that particular gentleman's funeral cortege that was about to leave from his house. In the car was his coffin, and of course in the car behind his wife and his children and so on. And you can see, what did we do as a choir? Well, we did a kind of a funeral, how would you describe it? A kind of a guard of honor, I suppose you'd describe it as, within the rights of what we were allowed to do. Ordinarily, we would go and we would sing Gwahoddiad whenever a member of the choir passes away, which is a very famous Welsh hymn. But I just thought we demonstrated through that an absolute empathy with his widow and his family. And I know that meant a huge amount to them. I'm just giving you an example of what real empathy looks like. It's a demonstration that you get it. You don't have to say anything particularly. It can just be body language if necessary, but you're actually demonstrating that you feel an affinity with them. Does this make sense to all? Okay, so if we've done that, we've attended, we've understood, we've empathized through demonstration or words or whatever else it might be. What do you think the fourth might be? God, somebody's got to have a go. Somebody's got to have a go. Oh, thank you, Kate. Go on.
I feel like I'm stealing, is it Jacqueline's thunder? But act or support to act.
Yeah, it's good enough. It's good enough. Everybody else is too shy, you see that. But you are you at least brave enough to be a pioneer and go forward and be prepared to take arrows in the front as well as in the back. Yes, the final thing, actually, it's helping, which, as far as you're concerned, acting. Yeah, so doing something, in other words, that actually manifests where the person understands that not only they attended, you've understood, you've empathized, but now you're prepared to do something to help them. And this rather sad picture, that's me in hospital in March this year, where I'd been taken by ambulance. I'd had a full-on seizure. I really wasn't very well at all. That's my lunatic eldest son who'd come to see me to make sure that all was well. And if you've ever seen anybody have a full-on grand mal seizure, you'll know just how terrifying it is. I was very lucky when it happened. I'd just finished a Institute of Health and Social Care Management Special Interest Group Digital Technology meeting. My friend, who you can see here in the specs here, his name is Paul. He'd come round to my house. It was a Friday afternoon about 3 o'clock, and we were doing some singing rehearsal together for a new song the choir is learning, when all hell broke loose and I had my big seizure. I've never had one before. It was just really, really frightening. Okay. Paul went and got my wife, and he spent the time on the 999 for 45 minutes trying to explain to 999 what was going on, while they were helping him to tell my wife what to do with me and when not to do something with me and so on. And it was all very, very frightening. But do you know what? He did the most fantastic job. And without him, I'm not absolutely certain what would have happened. But here's the really important thing that hopefully many of you who work in health and social care will recognize. It took Paul, honestly, 5 or 6 weeks, I would say, for him to process emotionally what he'd witnessed with his mate. And he came up to me in the pub after a choir rehearsal some weeks later, and he said, John, I just want to say one thing to you about what happened. He said, honestly, right now, I feel privileged to have been able to help. Isn't that lovely? What a fantastic choice of words. And I bet you all feel the same way. You will hopefully all be in situations where you feel privileged to be able to help. Often it'll be patients or service receivers if you're in social care. Quite often, though, understand it will be colleagues and peers and your followers, people whom you can actually demonstrate a real privilege to help. Isn't that just delightful? So I don't mind. It's a difficult story to tell you, as you might understand, hopefully, but can you understand what I'm driving at here in respect of these 4 foundation principles? So they are, as we've just discussed here: attend, understand, empathize, and help. They are the 4 cornerstones, okay? And what it boils down to for me, it's this. Would anybody like to speculate what the heck this is about? If we're serious about compassionate leadership, why is this slide important? Please, somebody say something. Go on, Tom, what do you reckon?
Well, I must confess, I liberated the little card that's in front of you. That's my polite way of saying I pinched it the last time I was on a Thomas Cook flight. And it's the one that reminds you to put your own oxygen mask on first, because if you're not compassionate to yourself, you'll not have the capacity to be compassionate to other people.
I think that's 100% right. I'm giving you top of the class there. Lovely. Yeah, this is about the cabin safety announcement, which goes something along the lines of, in the event of sudden cabin depressurization, oxygen masks will descend from the ceiling. What should you do? Well, of course, you should put your own on before you start trying to help somebody with whom you may be traveling. In the context of compassionate leadership, this means we have to get our own internal soundtrack right and at one with understanding and embracing the whole concept of compassion in leadership. This isn't some kind of soft, perceptively weak kind of behavioral attribute that you might want to display. I promise you, if you have compassion running through your soul and you lead your people in a compassionate manner, you will absolutely see them demonstrate for you a high performance work environment, because they feel supported, listened to. They will feel motivated. They'll feel energized. They'll feel positive. They'll feel they've got somebody they can go to with stuff that may be a problem for them. And you liberate them to just concentrate, therefore, on the work that you're asking them to do. I hope this makes sense to everybody. I didn't explain that terribly well, but do you get the gist, all of you? Because that's what we've got to embrace. And I promise you now, you'll get people, they may be more senior than you, and they will talk to you and say, oh, you're being too kind to that person. They're a troublemaker or whatever, or oh, they're always up to no good. They just need flipping well sorting out, You got to get a bit harder on them. I'm promising you now, I'm not trying to show off. I'm not trying to show off. I'm just telling you fact. I've been quite lucky in my career, in my life. I've been quite successful as a director and manager. Honestly, I've probably had at least hundreds of people who at one stage or other have been obliged to be led by me. Okay. I can promise you now, there's no more than 2 or 3 in total right across my career who you would say they are deliberately coming to work to be a troublemaker and provide problems. And even with those 2 or 3, actually, once I made an effort and really tried to figure out what was going on, there was something in their backstory or personality that was causing huge problems for them and was affecting their mental well-being, and that was what was provoking the problems at work. I honestly believe, hand on heart, most of your people, in fact, all of your people who come to work for you, they come to work on a daily basis wanting to give of their very best. Our job is to create a compassionate environment where they are liberated to do that. And that's it. Look, we're out of time. We've got about 5 minutes left. Would anybody like to make any comment at all? If I stop, I'm going to put my details up just in case anybody did want to contact me. You would be very, very welcome to do so. It's always lovely to hear people's worked experiences or lived experiences on the basis of what we've discussed. There's my contact details. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now, come back to all of you and say, okay, Anybody got any thoughts? Well, that's either the most reassuring kind of reaction because you've got everything there, or actually you're still so stunned by the quality and caliber of the presentation that you're struck dumb periodically, or actually you're thinking there's one thing I really want to ask, but I'm not absolutely sure I can do so in this public environment. If that's the case, please contact me directly. I'll be only too happy to engage with you and give you some personal support. Okay? All right, let's leave it there for today then. And I thank you all for attending. Have a super rest of the week. I'm off on the train this afternoon. Wish me well. I'm up on the train up to Stafford, where I'm going to work for the University of Staffordshire tomorrow and their health and social care faculty and students. So wish me well up there, please. Hopefully the flooding will mean the train does work on time. For the rest of you, please embrace this idea of compassionate leadership. As I say, it's not a nice to have, it's an essential thing to do. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.